term Guided Pathways really came around about 7-8 years ago with my good friends from the Community College Research Center, CCRC, doing some research on the things that students struggled with in community colleges and also in higher ed and regional four-year colleges in general, at how students are really struggling to find their way through colleges. I think as you ask colleges to move down a pathway towards implementing guided pathways, you have to have the why in place first. And the why pretty strongly is around the topics of social justice and equity. When you look where in higher education low-income students tend to start, disproportionately they're starting in community colleges. And unfortunately, historically, it's been the sector that's had the lowest success rates. So this is really a social justice and equity issue. Colleges have done the best they can with limited resources compared to the other systems. But we've learned a lot in the last 10 or 15 years about the need for scaled reform. I'm shocked by how often people misdefine equity. I mean, equity is about outcomes. It's about making sure that you have the systems and structures in place to ensure that the outcomes are same, whether you look at gender or race or disability, that the outcomes are the same. And so I think one of the things that Guided Pathways does is help you work on the systems and structures and cultural things that help you achieve those outcomes. We're not there yet. I mean, I think when you look at there are some colleges who've done the Guided Pathways work who are certainly shrinking so-called achievement gaps. But I also think that we need to continue to think about the intersection between these structural and systemic changes and the more equity movement type changes, but because we're all working towards the same goals on this, right? To make sure that we're achieving not only equitable outcomes, but improved and equitable outcomes. I joke sometimes in front of rooms like, look, we could get equity. Let's say a college that has 35% completion rate for white students, 28% for black students, and 20% for Latino students. That's an equity. That's an achievement gap, right? Well, you could get equity by making everyone drop to 20%. Right? That would be equity in outcomes. That's not what we're shooting for. We're not even trying to pull everyone up to the average of white students. We're actually trying to get better. We're trying to make sure that 55, 60, 65% of students reach their goals, and it's equitable by various groups. And so I think we've sharpened the mission of that in the last couple of years as we realized people thought that Guided Pathways was over here and equity is over here. This is the work of Guided Pathways. It's an umbrella over a lot of things, and a strong sense of equity should be driving this work.